they forgot the enjoyment factor that you get from rugby. And I'm hoping
Ah,
that like this will lead to a lot more people coming back gradually, and more consciously as well.
I think I like that sense more consciously because I think what's happened is that people think that their boredom threshold is very low, and they forget that things take effort, and you can't be entertained all the time. I mean, we talked a little bit about social media and the dangers of it very
Hmm.
briefly at the start there, and I think just as bad as the next person, I'm sort of looking at my phone rather than saying there are times when there's nothing going to be happening
Hmm.
and I cannot do anything about it. And I just go sit and think. And there's a couple of occasions recently where I've just been sitting there and I've not had a book or my phone, maybe waiting for something to happen. And I've just said, well, actually, this is quite good for me to be sitting here. It's painful.
Hmm.
And people aren't necessarily, former players aren't necessarily going back into playing sport because they think that they've got to be doing something else, which is unfortunately not rugby related. And it'd be great for them to be back in rugby, but they they're expecting a lot more from it than there probably was in there in the first place. And I think we've just got to be able to be bored a little bit sometimes, not to get 120% out of something when in
Hmm.
fact we should be getting, say, 80 or 70%, because sometimes you're going to have a bad session. You're going to
Yeah.
come away thinking, that wasn't so good. The coach didn't get it right. I wasn't on form. Doesn't mean you leave rugby or you leave the sport. It means that you say that's going to happen, and we've got to be maybe a bit more accepting of that. It's a bit like again in social media, and you're probably good to avoid this. The rugby pundits on television are getting a very hard time of it at the moment,
Yeah.
and I mean I'm just as frustrated as the next person when I think a pundit gets it wrong. But really, does it really matter that much if they are making the wrong calls and if they aren't seeing it for what it is? It's just a game, and we could get it right. We could do it better. We can do everything better. But it's entertainment, and sometimes these personalities just say completely the wrong thing, and they don't get it right. Um, Maybe we just need to be a little bit more accepting and just get on with things and roll with it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting too grumpy. Or maybe getting too. I'm too accepting of this.
Philosophical. Yeah. I think in general, I just think the more this time away, I think that's given people both more time to think about what they want to do and how they want to play rugby and enjoy rugby, or choose to not do that. But it's also given people, with TikTok and all this stuff coming up, like it's given people more things to be distracted by and actually fill up those gaps and fill everything up. And a lot of I'm experiencing quite a few people now that are either taking up rugby for the first time, or they've not played for 6 plus years, let's say, and they're coming back and they want to do it just because they enjoy it. And I think that's really good. And I think that's what the RFU, I believe, are trying to get people down to do. But I also think that there's a lot of thing. Rugby's changing, and society changes as with it as well, or society is changing and rugby is changing with it.
Mm.
And I think that, does that mean that like it has to be completely different and we can't embrace whatever is new? And does it mean that like who are we appealing rugby to, or who are we trying to get rugby to appeal to, is something that I concern myself with a bit as well, because I think that it's now becoming a lot more of a spectator first sport, sort of like American football, as opposed to rugby has always been, since I've known it, a sport that just loads of people play. And then, a lot of people will go and enjoy watching rugby as well. But like, it's not uncommon for local small town teams in England to have up to 5 different teams, even more so in Australia. Like, and that's sort of seeing, I keep seeing that dying potentially.
Well, I think there's a couple of things tied up in that. I mean, when you come back to rugby, you just start rugby. You've got to actually be fit to play the game, and the difficulty comes when these people rock up, and within about 5 minutes they are absolutely shattered to start with. But also, there's these players are coming along and they're picking up niggling injuries, which mean they come back and then they disappear again because they've picked up an injury which they could probably have avoided if they were just a bit fitter. So there's that. So sort of to address the sort of second thing, what who is rugby for and what is it for? One of the things I've done in the last 4 or 5 months is I've just got back into refereeing because there's a shortage of referees where I'm based. I'm based in Bristol, and every weekend there's been 5 to 10 games which have not taken place or haven't been able to be happen in the right way because there's been no referee. And there's a number of reasons for that, probably the same as the reasons that some of the reasons that players are dropping out. So there's a lot in that. But the point I was trying to make around that is that I've seen sort of the grassroots of the grassroots game in action.
Hmm.
And I just wonders how why some of these players are playing. Some of them are playing it for the joy of it, and others are just playing it so they can just be nasty with somebody else. And I just I just wonder is that is it's quite hard to referee when somebody is out there. Yeah, you want to make a tackle, you want to physically dominate your player, but actually they want to harm them in a quite an unfortunate way. And
Hmm.
then, of course, when they do that, like they try and smash into someone's head with their shoulder quite deliberately, everybody then becomes very edgy in the game, and it just makes for a bad atmosphere. And that's that. It's like watching a bit of these clips on TikTok of Sunday League football, where someone comes in with 2 feet, chops a guy, and they fly in the air. W- What what is possessing that player to come to a game of football or rugby with the intent to harm somebody else? That's not sport.
Hmm. I
I
think
don't know whether I don't
that's
know where I've taken that from. Where your
no,
original
I know.
question.
No, I think there's a. I mean, we spoke about the short attention spans and the the social media is looking for the highlight reels and stuff. And I do think that there's something to that as well. Like you'll see it a lot in rugby where, I mean, you even see it at the top level with like Australia or I only say Australia because I saw it come from their account, but England will do the same. Any country, they'll lose a game or even they'll get pumped in a game, but they'll still put 3 or 4 highlights up of their team doing well. And I get that. Like you want to appeal and you want to show the highlights, and you want to show the things that went well, but it kind of goes against what the sport is almost because you know if you do take a loss, you take your licks and you move on. But then also at the same time, like there's nothing wrong with celebrating good moments within a game. So it gets difficult. But I think we get a lot of people now potentially that come into rugby just to make that highlight reel style big hit or big carry or something and not really care about the actual values of the game and potentially now even going even deeper. Jesus, we're going deep to start this already.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
but I think we did this last time, but potentially I think that like that's why rugby has its traditional values and it leans into those so hard to begin with because it is very tempting to just in a sport where you can be just a big physical bully to be a big physical bully and to have values where it's all about camaraderie and having beers after the game and respecting the ref obviously being a huge one. Like I think it needs that in order to survive because if it wasn't it would be chaos.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there should be always be a bit of edge in the game, and the great thing about rugby is the physicality.
100%.
So we can't go away from that. There is obviously there's a lot of concern around head injuries. I think it is more of a concern at the top level because I just feel that sometimes these players seem to come back very quickly and doesn't seem to make sense. I know that they're going through various protocols, but from the outside, it doesn't seem to make sense. But I'm interested to think about rugby values overall. I think it's something which is put out there a lot, but how much do people really follow that through?
Yeah.
Is there a real culture of following those values as a person, as a player? Because do people think I'm playing rugby, therefore, yeah, after the game we'll shake hands, have a beer, and be nice to each other? That's one set of rugby values. But on the pitch, are they looking to cheat their way around the game?
Hmm.
Are they looking for the to find a way to win the game, which doesn't necessarily play within the spirit of the game? And I see that more often then it should be happening. And of course, the referee is in quite a difficult position because they're not all seeing
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to make judgments. Now, sometimes there are mistakes which aren't done to gain an advantage. A player goes off their feet, they accidentally come offside because they've been tricked, they knock the ball on because they've mistimed something, they mistime a tackle, and they get themselves into the wrong body position for a tackle. They're not trying to get an edge. But other players, well, they will be niggling, they'll be just pulling a shirt back here, they'll be just putting their hands on the ball for a bit longer. Now, uh, is it up to you and me to go and tell that player to change their values? Is it up to the RFU, the ARU, any of the bodies to tell these players, or is it up to the player to do it? I read Jurgen Klopp talking, the Liverpool manager talking
Mm-hmm.
about their values at Liverpool, and one of the things is that everybody is responsible for everybody who's on the pitch. And if you're on the pitch, you should respect the fact that somebody has helped you get on there who isn't necessarily Jurgen. It is someone who's laid out the kit, someone who has cooked the meals, someone who's cleaned the changing rooms. All these people are all part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do we tell somebody when they walk in the door, this is who you've got to respect? Or should they come through the door and say, actually, I've got to understand my position here, and I've got to understand that I need to respect everybody else, whether they are the captain, the manager, or the bottle washer.